Welcome back to My Mythical Meta. My name is Travis, and I am joined by my good friend Derek and my brother Benjamin.
Hello.
Hello, audio listener.
Welcome back to another Essential Concepts episode. Today we are talking about fixing and upgrading your Magic the Gathering mana bases. Are you tired of mana flood or mana screw, or never having the right color when you need it? Or does it seem like all of your opponents are moving faster than you, even when you're on the same turn and the same land drop? All of these problems are classic signs of a mana base that desperately needs an upgrade. And so today, we are going to give you those tools and the know-how to have a mana base that fits the bracket you actually want to play in. And for anybody playing 1v1 competitive Magic, your bracket is 5.
Yes.
That's the bracket you want to be aiming for. And so as we talk about all of the lands leading up to that point, just hold on if you are playing competitive Magic until we get to bracket 5, until we talk about what the best of the best looks like.
25th land might surprise you.
Yeah, that's right. We have got a new shout out today to a brand new patron, Tony Howe.
Tony, how are you doing?
Tony, how
I'm sure he's never
are
heard
you
that one
doing? I'm
before.
sure he's never gotten that joke.
He's never heard it.
Yeah, we're
I'm a
100%
trailblazer.
originals here. Tony, thank you so much for becoming a patron. As I tell all of our patrons, thank you for taking that leap. We know that you have choices when it comes to your podcast and your entertainment, and we are so honored and thankful that you've chosen us. And every listener out there, we appreciate your clicks, we appreciate your views, and if you also want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/mymythicalmeta, or you can join our YouTube community of full hardness metapods by clicking join anywhere our videos are playing. So back to today's essential concepts, we're talking about upgrading and fixing a mana base that just isn't working. And this is going to be a topic that a lot of other card games, and we know because we've played a lot of other card games, don't really have to worry about. In Magic, you have to manage your resources as part of the game. I mean, Derek has been saying since we started the pod that Magic is a resource management game, just like board games where you have to manage your brick and ore and wheat and sheep and acquire them through variance. Magic is doing that too. You've got to figure out ways to get the resources you need. And a lot of the card games we've played have smoothed that out or eliminated the variance completely, saying, hey, every card can be a resource, or here's your resource automatically every turn. But that's not what Magic does. Magic requires the player to consider their resources, their mana, as part of deck building.
We have all played, especially this year, have played several different card games. And at least in my experience, the most unique thing about Magic is that it does have a land resource system. Like, lands are a resource we have to build into the deck. We don't just get them for free. And so I think by watching this video, you're going to have a better idea of how to build that. It's what makes Magic special and different from any other card game. And I think, once you have done a good job building a land base, there's a point of pride. You're like, hey, I built this with my own two hands.
Yes, it feels so good.
Just having something just hum and get off the ground is like, wow, look how fast I took off. Look what I've done. So I think this video is going to give you a good head start, listener, to having a better, moving up to the bracket you want to be in.
Exactly. So if you've agreed that you want to play Magic, acquiring that knowledge is going to make you a better player. The quality and ratio of your lands does directly affect the speed of your deck. So sometimes that comes with a monetary investment to get the better lands. Not all lands are created equal.
Right.
Do remember proxying is free.
Do remember that proxying is free. It's only as expensive as your at-home printer makes it. And in Commander, where matchmaking is divided into brackets, each bracket has an expected speed. And so each bracket has an appropriate mana bases for its various decks. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today, talking about what makes lands good and what makes lands bad and which ones we want to shift our focus to, and how you can upgrade, where you should focus on printing your new lands out, or whether you want to acquire them and invest in them. Now, this topic is different from ramp. Even though ramp and land are very closely linked, we are not going to talk about ramp, how to ramp, when to ramp, whether or not to ramp. That is already a different episode that we've done, and as of now, it's our top video of all time. So you
That's
can
right.
find that right here. It's called EDH Meta Changing, No More Ramp, and that video and this video are going to go hand in hand if you
Yes.
want to really smooth out the inner mechanics of your deck. So let's get into the nitty gritty. This video, this topic is kind of Benjamin's passion project. He's been telling us for a month now, hey, we need to do a mana base episode. Benjamin, how do I know if a land is good or not and whether it's worth including in my deck? Start us off.
That's a really good question. To me, I think the best rule of thumb for deciding if a land is good or bad for a deck is just to compare it to a basic land. I think that really people need to go back to the roots and really respect that basic lands are really good. And as we go through the factors of what makes a land good or not, you'll see that basic lands check many of these boxes. So we're going to go through several factors here about what makes a land good or not. And if you're trying to decide whether or not to include a land, think about over the course of a game, would I rather draw this or a forest? Would I rather
That's
draw
a great
this
question.
or an island? And you'll find that oftentimes, and consider that in games as well. You've packed your deck full of non-basic lands. When you draw it, go, do I wish this was a mountain? And many times the answer will be yes, and you should keep that in mind. And as you'll start to learn how to internalize that and do that during deck building rather than during gameplay. But
Right.
yeah,
That is one of the best little like improvement or level up tricks I learned, is to start asking that question while you play a game. And this is true for the 101st card. You know, if you're stuck in between the 101st card and a different card, and you just need to practice it, every time you draw that 100th card, every time you draw it, say, would I rather this had been my 101st? But start looking at the cards that perform when you draw them and then the cards that don't. So that's just a general level up tip. So like Benjamin said, here are the factors that make a land good or not. And these are in no particular order. They're just things that you need to think about. And I'm actually going to name all of our 5 factors up front, and then we'll talk about each one individually. So first, does it come in untapped or does it come in tapped? That's the first factor, untapped versus tapped. Second factor, colorless versus colored mana versus multicolored mana. Colorless, colored, or multicolored. The next one, any added utility. What else can it do besides providing mana? Next, fetchability. Can this land be yoinked out of your deck by another card? And then last, the amount of mana provided. Is it none, 1, 2, or more? Count how much mana that land provides. And I'm going to start us off with this factor number 1, untapped versus tapped. The good lands come in always untapped. Okay.
Yeah.
And remember, basics fit that criteria. A basic land always comes in untapped, and you never have to worry about it slowing you down. Other lands that are good in this category are lands that are conditionally untapped. Lands that say, this land enters tapped unless, and then they provide some condition. I know that we have lots of beginners on our channel and in our community. A great way to search this up on Scryfall is in the advanced search, do type land, and then in text put enters tapped unless. And then that's going to start giving you all of the different conditions that a land would look for in order to come in untapped. So lands that check to see if you control a mountain or a swamp. If it's a 2-colored land, that's what, Dragon Skull Summit? Yeah, so Dragon Skull Summit is a red and black land, and it says when it comes in, hey, do you have a mountain or a swamp? If you do, I'll come in untapped for you. So look for those lands that check how many opponents you have. You know, those battle bond lands.
Mm-hmm.
Luxury Suites, I think, is red. I
Yep.
don't know why I know all the red black ones. Luxury
I
Suites.
wonder.
I wonder, it's going to check how many opponents do you have? Because if you have more than 2, I'll come in untapped for you. So always look for those. There are a few tapped lands that in general I like, but it's always going to depend on what else they do. That added utility that we're going to talk about later. For example, one always tapped land that I do like is Path of Ancestry. Because Path of Ancestry basically says, I'm going to come in tapped, but I'm going to provide multicolor. I'm going to do any color you need, and you will always scry when you play your commander. To me, that's pretty good. That's pretty decent if I'm playing commander. And obviously, if I'm playing a Kindred deck, that gets even better because I can scry more and more and more and more. Whenever you're looking at your lands and deciding which ones, you should always lean towards the ones that enter untapped. All right. Benjamin, what's our next category?
All right, our next category is what type of mana does it provide? Does it provide colorless mana? Does it provide a single color? Or does it provide multiple colors depending on your needs? Obviously, you want to lean towards lands that can provide all of your colors if necessary. There are some really good ones like City of Brass or Mana Confluence that will always provide.
Or Command Tower.
Or Command Tower. That's right. Command Tower is the best one. And so those are going to be the best ones, right? Usually the ones that provide all of your colors will often come at a cost. So I mentioned City of Brass and Mana Confluence. They come at the cost of 1 life every time you tap them. So those are usually only better when you have 3 or more colors. Otherwise, there are lots of 2-color cards that will provide all your colors without the same cost. In this case, your basic lands, they're only going to provide 1 color, but they come at no cost, right? They come into play untapped and don't require any life. They're excellent. A lot of the utility lands that are out there, the ones that provide additional benefits for playing them, a lot of them only provide colorless mana. And when you have a lot of color requirements in your deck, you really need to consider how having a colorless land might slow you down. For example, I love to play Rogue's Passage in any aggro-based deck because just the ability to make any creature unblockable is great. But if I'm playing a deck with, say, a Devotion deck, if I'm playing a deck that needs double colors often, maybe I'm running counter spells, maybe I'm running things like that.
Big Green Stompy.
Yeah, exactly.
Is often going to have multiple green pips.
Yeah. Or if you're running a what are the one they're like 2/3/2 for their mana pips.
The ultimatums.
If you've got ultimatums in your deck, then having colorless
is just simply not going to help you.
Yeah. It means that you're not playing that till turn 8 at the earliest.
Yeah.
Right. So you really have to consider the color requirements for your deck when you're putting in utility lands. But even lands that only provide a single color. This is not just basic lands, but also like the pathways, the ones that are different colors on different sides, or Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse. They can fix your mana, but they will only provide you 1 color at a time. If you're playing decks that might say on turn 4 you want to play something with 3 white mana, on turn 5 you want to play something with 3 black mana, single color lands are not going to be able to get you there, right? So you're going to want to lean, the more heavy your color requirements are, the more important it is that your lands provide multiple colors of mana.
Yeah, and I know I stepped a little bit on the next category's toes when I was talking about scrying, but Derek, what's another factor that we need to look at when picking lands?
Yeah, I've said it a million times, but we only have 100 cards in this deck, so the cards need to be doing double duty when they can. So we need to look for lands that can do, extra stuff, add utility to situations that we might not otherwise have. Situations like when we're mana flooded. Maybe if we draw a land, get Baron Ash or Ash Bedlands? Ash Barons, yeah. Which has cycling, things that let us, get rid of these lands to draw a card for something better, or maybe mana sinks that let us what's the one I like? I think it's red green that lets me give them trample, like it gives them plus X plus trample.
Garg the Rage
Pits. Okay, yeah. Something like that.
Kessig Wolf Run.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
A nice little mana sink to dump a lot of mana in. It's like, hey, I need to win, so here we go. I've got nothing else to spend my mana on because I'm not drawing the right cards. So dump it in and hope for a win. Another situation is versatility. If I draw the wrong card, maybe I drew an island, but I needed a mountain. Well, if you have things like the modal flip cards that have a land on each side, or even the ones that have a spell and a land
Right.
on each side, it lets us kind of, play the situation as we need it. We could, you know, change the land into the type we need, or we can play a spell if we don't need a land, or play the land if we don't need the spell. The channel lands for Neon Genesis,
Neon Dynasty. Kamigawa Neon
Evangelion,
Dynasty.
what is it called?
Yeah.
Yeah, so things like Beseiju, Who Endures, I think,
Uh-huh.
lets you destroy target artifact or enchantment for green and 1, I think. The other ones do something not as good. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's a land, and there are ways to get lands out of graveyards fairly easy, so it's not that bad of a cost to do. So it's nice to have, like, let's get rid of this land and let's destroy something.
Yeah. Tarkir Dragonstorm had a cycle of these utility lands that, because Tarkir is a wedge plane, it's looking for if you have the other two land types. So the one I want to talk about is Mysterized Village. I think it's probably the best one. It taps for blue, but when it enters tapped unless you control a mountain or forest. So it looks to see if you've already played one of those other lands, and then you can pay blue and tap it. The next spell you cast this turn can't be countered.
That's
So
pretty good.
when you're putting it in your deck, you would say, this is a blue land that can help me protect a spell. And it will come in untapped if I'm also playing red or if I'm also playing green. A great spell because of its versatility. If I choose not to play it with a red or green deck, then it's a tap land that does that.
Yeah, but you could
So?
play it. It's not, because it doesn't say, or it's not a red pip or a green pip. It just says mountain or forest. You could play it in just a blue-red deck, just a blue-green deck.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got nice flexibility there. It's not locked into just one 3-color type.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So our next topic is fetchability. I play green because I'm not that great at making a mana base, and it's going to help, playing Cultivates, Kodama's Reaches, things like that are going to help us hit all our lands. Farseek, get a mountain, swamp, plains, island, whatever. Things that really help us pick the cards we need and get our mana bases sorted out.
Right. So that will make a land better if it is fetchable by these
Exactly.
spells.
Yeah.
So obviously Kodama's Reach and Cultivate, they're only going to look for basics. And again, that makes a basic really good
Mm-hmm.
because you can fetch out your basics with lots of spells. There's very few spells that can search out non-basic lands. But if you've got a non-basic land that has a basic land type, a mountain island or the triomes that are mountain island forest, that is going to make a spell like Farseek much more effective, because now I don't have to grab a basic. I can grab a land that could provide 3 different colors.
And they're almost certainly coming in tapped anyways because of the spell. So
Yeah.
Right.
them being tap lands anyways is not that big of a deal.
Exactly. All right, and now Benjamin, get us to our last factor, the amount of mana provided.
Okay, so the vast majority of lands tap for 1 mana at a time, and that's fine. There are lands that do not tap for mana at all. Maze of Ith, Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Glacial Chasm, Dark Depths, and if you're putting those kinds of lands in your deck, you really have to consider the cost. 1, they do not provide mana unless you have something like a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth or a Urborg. If you've got one of those, okay, maybe sometimes your land will tap for mana, but usually you understand that this is actually negative mana because it takes up your land drop. And so you're not progressing. That's a huge cost. I play Maze of Ith in any deck that can support it because I love...
Yeah.
Basically, if my deck is playing an Urborg or a Yavimaya, I'm probably going to throw Maze of Ith in there. So these are not bad lands by any means, but that's a huge drawback, right? So keep that in mind. Most lands, like I said, will tap for 1. That's standard. Fine. There are a lot of lands that tap for 2 mana.
Most of them aren't good.
Most of them are not good, but you can abuse many of them. So many of them are good. So like Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, Eldrazi. There's some Eldrazi lands that do that. Those are good. And if you're playing
You forgot to mention Temple of the False God is one of the best ones.
Woo! Sound off in the comments whether you think Temple of the False God is a good land or a bad land.
It's not
Ooh,
good.
bad land is a great land.
Badland is a good land. Temple of the False God is a bad land. But Ancient Tomb, it's a game changer because it provides 2 mana. Comes in untapped, provides 2 mana. Very, very good. Most of the lands that provide 2 or more mana have some sort of condition on it. Some lands that it's debatable if they're good or not. Bounce lands, generally early in the game, they're very bad.
Let's clarify what a bounce land is. It
Sure.
says that when you play it, you need to return a different land to your hand.
Doesn't have to be different. Could be the same one.
I think it'd be the same land.
It can be. You cannot play it on an empty board.
Okay.
Useful when someone has a. I mean, there are combos that rely on the ability to return themselves to your hands, but that's not the point. The point is, they're lands that tap for 2 mana, but when you play them, you have to return a land to your hand, and almost all of them come into play tap. So because of that, you're not going up on mana the turn you play them, and you're not really getting ahead on land drops. But if you have 5 lands in your hand, you will ultimately get to 6 mana. So it's useful. It's also useful if you have untapped shenanigans, because instead of untapping a land that just provides 1, you're untapping a land that provides 2.
This is my opinion. It's probably a wrong one. If you want a bounce land to be good, there are several other shenanigans you have to go through in order to make it be good.
Right.
Yeah. And
That's
then it
my
wins you the
opinion.
game.
Yeah. I basically would not play bounce lands in your deck unless you already have the shenanigans, because your deck is doing that anyway.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
yeah.
My deck needs to be built in such a way to abuse what would be a bad land that I would almost never play.
Right. But in the decks where they're
Because-
good, they're very good, in my opinion.
Sure.
Now, on the flip side, Ancient Tomb can go into any deck that has colorless mana requirements. And then there are the ones that provide more than 2 mana. These are going to be like your Nykthoses, your Cabal Coffers, your Gaia's Cradles. These are the ones that tap for maybe 10 or 20 mana, depending on the board state or what's been going on. Definitely, they're providing 3, 4, 5 mana on a regular basis. They usually require that your deck is built around them, and they generally are very expensive because of how easy it is to abuse them. But these are very, very good if your deck can support them. So if you're in a monocolored deck with a lot of permanents, Nykthos should probably go in there. If you're playing a lot of swamps or you're playing an Urborg, Cabal Coffers is an easy include. If you're playing a lot of creatures, Gaia's Cradle. Now, like I said, these are going to be very expensive, but almost any deck that's already checking the box for their requirement should probably include them.
Yeah. If you're looking to increase the power of that deck.
Exactly.
The more resources you have to spend, the more mana you spend in a game will make you more likely to win said game. Yeah. And I just want to add on, you should always remember that in the game of Magic, life is yet another resource you have. You only need 1 life to still win the game, especially in Commander where you start at 40. That is so much resource to spend. So lands that rely on a life payment is almost always worth paying. The poster child of this are the shock lands. They say, listen, I provide 2 colors, I'll come in tapped, but if you pay 2 life, then I'll come in untapped for you. That's great. That's a great cost to immediately have access to whatever color of mana you needed. There are the pain lands, which will tap for colorless for nothing, but then they'll tap for 2 colors at the cost of 1 life each time. Those are generally fine too. So you can think of all the times you're going to spend it for colorless, and then all the times you're going to spend it for colored. And usually when I have one of those pain lands, I might pay 4 to 6 life over the course of a game. Over the course of a game, that's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
you know?
Yeah.
No.
Well,
That's
it's 10th of your life, but it's
But
not that
yeah.
bad.
But the fact that you never lost tempo,
Exactly.
right? It came in untapped, provided multiple colors. I'm a big proponent of the pain lands and the shock lands. There are often games that we play in our meta where we'll get to turn 4 and I have 10 less life than everyone else because I'm playing fetches, shock lands, and pain lands, and everyone's
Yeah,
like,
we'll look over Benjamin. What's been going on with you?
yeah,
Why are you
who
so
hurt
low?
you? But very
And you would say,
rarely,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
very rarely has that actually been the deciding factor in a game, because I was hitting all my colors and doing it on curve. Usually that's more important than a few life.
It
Yeah,
also it
Benjamin.
psychologically gets in people's heads where like Benjamin's low, he's not really the threat right now. So and so, Travis still has 40 life, Randy still has 40 life. Let me attack them first.
Well, I was going to mention sometimes I notice the opposite where Benjamin's at 30 life, but he has an incredible board state.
Yeah.
And that sometimes gets me to want to attack him, but then he'll point to the people with 40 and say, "Look, I'm already at 30. There's no reason to attack me." Start working on bringing everybody else down. Like I said earlier, this is not a ramp episode, but the talismans are an especially good mana rock. Because they cost 2, come in untapped, immediately provide 1, and they can provide your colored mana 1 at a time also, at the cost of 1 life, just like these pain lands. That's really good. They're some of the best mana rocks out there. So those are the 5 factors. I'll list them again. Untapped versus tapped, colorless, colored, or multicolored lands, added utility, especially within your game plan, because that's going to increase the value of a land if it's in line with everything else you want to do. Fetchability, does it work with your other ramp spells if you've decided to include them in your deck? And then the amount of mana provided. And this one is huge. Again, 1 is the standard, but if a land provides 2 or more, that should really skyrocket its value, both in US dollars and in playability in your deck.
Yeah.
So let's look at each bracket level, and we'll talk about what they typically look like, and then how someone playing at bracket 1 could start improving their mana base towards bracket 2 or towards bracket 3. If you want your mana base to run smoother, what does the mana base at each bracket particularly look like? Each bracket kind of has an expected speed. So let's talk about bracket 1. Remember, bracket 1 is extremely casual. Your expectation to win is usually low or non-existent, because bracket 1 decks are exhibition decks, meme decks, jank. They want to show off something rather than actually win most of the time. Mana base in bracket 1 is often anywhere between 30 and 40 lands, probably on the upper end. The hallmark of bracket 1, lots of basics.
Yes.
We already established that a basic land is really good. It's untapped. It's 1 colored mana. That is what our spells need to start getting cast. But then they might have a handful of budget dual lands that enter tapped. And here are some that we see all the time. We especially see them in our deck doctors.
Yeah.
And so we usually end up cutting these. We call them the gain lands. These are the lands that provide 2 colors, but they come in tapped and gain 1 life, like Blossoming Sands. Certainly better than a Guildgate, which provides nothing, but we've already said 1 life is not worth the effort, I guess. There's the Scry lands, which are always called Temple of something, Temple of Abandon, or Temple of Milady.
I don't hate the Skylands.
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
run them very often anymore, but I don't hate them. I'll put them in a deck.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do agree that I think scrying has high value. It's that card selection, making sure you get the better option. But it enters once, it scries once, and it is tapped, and that's it. Again, a land that should be in every deck at any bracket. Command Tower is very, very good. So, tips for improving your bracket 1 mostly basic mana base is start tracking your color needs. Don't just throw in equal numbers of each basic, saying, okay, I'm going to have 30 basics and 8 non-basics. Let me just do 10 of each.
Yeah.
Or, if I'm running a 3-color deck, let me just do 10 of each and go. It's like, no, slow down and look at how many, let's just say I'm building Jund. How many black spells do you have? How many red spells do you have? And how many green spells do you have? If the ramp spells in your deck are green, then you need to have more green to run those spells. Like, you've got to start fine-tuning the knobs to ensure that you have green in the early game so that you can play any early game ramp spells you drew. And then look for budget upgrades. Pain lands. We've already mentioned these, like Yavimaya Coast or Adarkar Wastes. They come in untapped, and then when you tap them for one of their colors, they ping you for 1. And then start looking for check lands. Check lands will check to make sure that you have fulfilled some category. They enter tapped unless blank. And we think the good ones are the ones that are looking at your other lands. So there's Black Cleave Cliffs, which says it enters tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. There's lands like Canopy Vista, which work on the flip side of that. Instead of checking for 2 or fewer lands, Canopy Vista says it enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Canopy Vista has land types like forest and plains, which makes them easier to fetch out with things like Skyshroud Claim, where you can search out a forest. Glacial Fortress says it enters tapped unless you control a plains or an island. So it's going to look at the other lands that you've already played and say, aha, you are playing another plains. I'll come in untapped for you.
These upgrades will be like if you do what Travis just suggested and start replacing your tapped duels like guild gates with these untapped duels or things that are coming in tapped less often, you're already moving into the bracket 2 range, right? Bracket 2 is your precons, your precons with a few upgrades, your low powered casual decks, the ones that you probably see the most often at an LGS and are the most common amongst new players is your bracket 2. And all of the land types that Travis just mentioned, your pain lands, your fast lands, your check lands, your snarls, those are all included in the precons almost always. So
yeah.
So I would say, hey, that is a bracket 2 mana base. And what you'll notice as we start talking about the various brackets is that oftentimes the number of lands that you run at each bracket decreases. Now, obviously, the number of lands depends on the deck itself, what your strategy is, all of that. But typically, you're running more ramp, you're having a better curve, you're running more card draw, and as your deck runs more smoothly and is built more correctly, you don't necessarily need 39 lands. You might be able to get away with 36 or 37. And usually that's going to really show itself in fewer basics and more lands that can give you the colors you need untapped. These are on the expensive side, but I think as you start getting into bracket 2 is where you start maybe seeing fetch lands for the first time. Prismatic Vista, Fabled Passage. Most of the time, it's your fetch lands are all going to be $20 to $30, so they're not usually what you're doing here. But if you've got one, people are throwing them in at bracket 2.
Well, I wanna offer up. I think bracket 2 is a place for things like Myriad Landscape. I think Myriad Landscape is sacrifice it for 2 of the same basic land. Is that right?
I think it costs 2 mana.
Yeah.
For 2 basic lands that share a land type. That's important because you cannot use Myriad Landscape to get a waste. Or you can get 1 waste, but you can't get 2.
Yeah, that's true. But so there are quote unquote fetch lands that I do think exist here in bracket 2.
Yeah, Blighted Woodland.
But the good ones, Fabled Passage and Prismatic Vista, which can help you search out basic lands.
There's also that I feel like it's that Eldrazi-ish one. It's colorless, but it's got a green-black type. I think you sacrifice it, so, kind of like Myriad Landscape, but I think it's better.
Blighted Woodland.
That sounds right.
Blighted Woodland.
Blighted Woodland costs more to activate, but it comes in untapped. And it gets 2 basic lands. I don't think they have to share a type. So if you're willing to spend more on the activation cost, you get more versatility. It's better. I do think it's better because you can get 2 different basics and it comes in untapped. Those are both, I think, very, very important.
So Benjamin, what are the lands we start to see in brackets 2 and 3?
All right. So as you get into brackets 2 and 3, you're really looking for lands that come into play untapped and provide multiple colors, or at least give you options for colors. So the pathways that let you pick a color when they come into play, the ones that let you sack to draw a card from Modern Masters. So that's like your Fiery Islet. That
Modern Horizons?
Modern Horizons. There you go. Sorry.
Yeah,
Modern Horizons. But then you can sack them to draw a card. Those, they come into play untapped. They provide multiple colors of mana. And then when you don't need them anymore, they draw you a card. Excellent utility, right? The Exotic Orchard, Travis, before the show started, you were mentioning how you'll put Exotic Orchard in any deck that's more than 1 color.
Pretty much, yeah. Exotic Orchard comes in untapped, and it says add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. There are only 5 colors. And so if I'm playing 2 of them, and I have 3 opponents, the chances are that my color is going to be represented somewhere else.
Don't
Right?
think I've ever played Exotic Orchard in anything less than 3 colors.
Me neither.
As my personal cutoff.
I mean, I do because there's just so many ways for me to get my colors.
Someone else playing a Nykthos gets you your colors.
Yeah, somebody else playing any land that says tap for any color. Any opponent playing a land that says this land taps for any color, I'm good to go. I don't have to really worry about it. So in my opinion, my Exotic Orchard is fine.
You do have the
And if not, I can just tap it for colorless. I mean, not colorless, but tap it for any color you guys are using, and I'll just use it for my generic mana costs.
you specifically have the benefit that me, Benjamin, and Randy all have kind of, predilections towards certain colors. Like I always play green, Benjamin almost always plays
Exactly.
black, and Randy almost always
Yeah.
plays white.
Yeah, I know that very few of you like monocolor decks. We don't have a lot of monocolor decks in our meta at all. And so if I'm playing 2 colors and everybody else is playing at least 2 colors, that's 4 people covering 5 colors of mana. It's just likely that my color is going to be shared, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Are either of you going to start putting Exotic Orchard in your 2 color decks?
Probably not.
No. Because there's
Fair.
just too much of a chance that you don't get it. It's not adding any of your colors. To me, it's not worth that. There's enough duels that come in untapped in 2 colors that I don't need to risk it.
You might have to pay 2 life for it, though,
I don't care.
which
mean,
we've
in my
already
s-
established is a fine price to pay.
My specific situation, a forest is probably as good as that Exotic Orchard is gonna
Yeah.
be.
That's true. I did want to mention at each bracket, your number of lands at all is likely to decrease, is likely to go down and down and down. So in bracket 1, you're probably looking at 38 lands at your top end. In bracket 2, you're probably moving down to 37-ish lands, or maybe 36. Same is true for bracket 3. You might be moving down to 35. And then in brackets 4 and brackets 5, you might even be moving down to 34, or in bracket 5, you might be down to 28, because the rest of the deck is so tuned and so tight, and the mana curve is so low, all of its combos are directed to go off at turns 2 or 3, where you only need 3 mana to end the game.
Where would we put Randy's Brago deck that was running 28 lands? Is that a jank meme deck in bracket 1? Because it
No.
did win back in the day.
No, I don't think it's jank at all.
No, it was good. I'd probably call it probably a good bracket 2 or a low bracket 3.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I think I'd call it 3. That deck has a lot of control in it, where whenever things enter, do something to mess something up.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of card draw. I mean, just last week, we did our episode about Green Goblin and playing cheap artifacts that when they enter, draw a card. Randy's Brago deck is full of artifacts like that, because they are all just free card draw every time Brago swings at somebody. And then that card draw helps him to get to the removal. I call it 3. I call it a bracket 3.
He was pulling it off with 28 lands.
That's
I do
'cause we
think
were-
that's the exception and not the rule.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Benjamin?
Well, yeah, I think the reason that maybe even all of us in the pod, but especially Randy, can get away with lower land counts because we'll leave him alone when he's floundering on lands. And so
Yeah.
that
That too.
if it takes him till
How
turn
magnanimous of us.
Yeah. If it takes him till turn 6 to get his 4th mana to play Brago, well, then he can go off. Okay. But as you get to bracket 4 and 5, you obviously, no one gets that time anymore. And
Exactly.
I think when
In
you're
brackets
playing
4 and 5, no one's going to wait.
yeah, you're playing lower
For you.
land counts because at brackets 4 and 5, people are playing mana vaults. They're playing Mox Diamond. They're playing Chrome Mox. They're playing Ancient Tombs. Their curve is much lower because you can't wait. You're playing it. You're not playing tutors that cost 3, 4, and 5. You're playing Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor, Worldly Tutor, Mystical Tutor, all the 1 mana ones. Because everything is so cheap and you're playing a lot of fast mana that is a game changer, so it isn't played at lower brackets. You don't need lands to try to get to the late game. Your late game starts on turn 4, and by then you're not looking to play lands anymore. Obviously, that's not universal. There are big mana decks at bracket 4 and 5, but in general, the styles of decks that are being played at those levels don't require you to run as many lands, and your lands are doing so much. You have perfect mana, right? You have your fetches like Misty Rainforest fetching you a Steam Vents, or a Triome. If you have perfect mana and you have perfect ramp, you just don't need as much. You don't need as many lands.
So here's some tips for improving your mana base at each level. Let's do that. If you are at bracket 1, here are your tips for improving your mana base. Avoid your lands entering tapped and prioritize lands that come in untapped, even conditionally. That is going to improve your mana base. If you want to improve your bracket 2 mana base, start balancing the number of colored sources to your deck's needs. I'll point to our Green Goblin deck again. We had a lot more red mana sources in that deck than any other color because we needed red for all of our card draw spells, all of our looting and rummaging spells.
Yeah, and don't forget, like, just because the card is red, it might be, red, 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 or something like that.
Yes.
Like, each of those
Yep.
pips is a land you're going to have to pay. So making sure that you have your pips counted is important.
Yes.
Exactly.
And at higher brackets, you do have to worry about things like Blood Moon, Ghost Quarters, and things. I always make sure that I have a basic land to cover every pip in all my cards. So if I have something that costs blue, 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 and whatever, I make sure I have at least 3 islands in the deck so that I'm never stuck in a situation where I cannot, where Blood Moon means I can't cast a card.
At bracket 3, instead of even thinking lands or raw land count, I need 35 lands or whatever, start thinking in terms of colored sources.
Yes.
And this is going to include your mana rocks, which rocks provide the colors that you need as well. Artifact ramp and things like that. Obviously, if you're at level 3 and you're starting to branch up into level 4, think about lands that cycle or lands that have additional utility. Like Derek mentioned earlier, Boseiju who endures. And then, here's something that I think is very interesting, pay attention to the sequencing of your lands. You should be looking at your mana base and your curve at the same time. Curving out smoothly really matters here. If you're looking at improving from level 3 into level 4, you cannot take a turn off.
Right. A great example of this is your Animar deck, which plays a lot of mana dorks that cost 1 green. Most mana dorks tap for 1 green, meaning that if you're not paying attention to your sequencing, you might play a forest into a Llanowar elf, and it did not accelerate you at all because Animar needs a blue and a red, and so you didn't do anything, right? The only way you're going to be able to use your mana dork to get Animar out on turn 2 is if you used a dual land that came in untapped to play your mana dork. So understanding that sequencing and building your mana base around that, huge.
I got the same not problem, but something to think about in my Frodo Sam deck. Frodo is just white black and Sam is green white 1. And so I need to have Frodo out first. So that way when I cast Sam the next turn, I can attack and get those triggers.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important that you have your white and black.
Yeah.
And you can wait till turn 3 to get your green if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At bracket 4, you've got to cut the lands that always enter tapped. You're probably no longer playing Path of Ancestry.
Yeah.
It comes in tapped, and even though it gives me all my colors, even though it scribes with my commander, at whatever turn I played Path of Ancestry, I needed that mana. I needed that land. I needed the mana from an untapped land to keep going and hopefully win the game.
What do you think about the Triomes? The Triomes have 3 basic land types. They come in tapped and they've got cycling 3. Do you think that's good enough to put in a bracket 4 deck?
I do, because their fetchability is so high and the utility of having cycling is okay. I mean, that's my opinion. I think their fetchability is so high.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there are times where you're going to fetch somebody else's end of turn. I would put, even at bracket 4, if I'm playing things like Farseek, or if I'm playing off-colored fetches, if I'm playing or things like that, including a Triome to be able to go get with those.
I was going to say, I may not include, like, say I'm running 4 or 5 colors. I may not include 4 Triomes.
Right, no. 2
because I think that's way too slow.
Yeah.
But maybe 2.
2 that cover all your colors.
Exactly. 2 that cover all my colors.
At bracket 4, you're also starting to get in those high dollar utility lands, things like Cavern of Souls. Cavern of Souls can make your commander uncounterable. Unfortunately, the prevalence of counter spells goes up with the bracket as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of lands out there that can provide protection from countering, that can, say, return a wizard to your hand or regenerate a creature or whatever. I think you start seeing those, but Cavern of Souls is a big one because if you're any sort of typal or kindred deck, your Cavern of Souls is providing perfect mana for your commander, makes your commander uncounterable at the very least.
Yeah. And then when you get to bracket 5, you are looking at a fully optimized dual land suite. So original dual lands. I mentioned earlier Volcanic Island. What are some other ones? Underground Sea is one.
Scrublands, Underground Sea,
Bayou. Yeah. So these
Y'all
are
say
lands
Bayou or Bio? Am I too country?
I've heard
Am I
it both
hickish?
ways. I say Bayou.
down here in Houston. We call it the Bayou.
Bayou.
But I was having lunch with John the other day and he says Bayou.
He does, doesn't
Yes,
he?
he
I was literally, well, I wasn't literally born on the Bayou, but I grew up on the Bayou.
Born on the banks of Buffalo Bayou.
How weird. Original dual lands. So these lands cost $1,000. They can be fetched with your other fetch lands, the ones that say pay 1 life, sacrifice, search for a particular land type. And then they come in untapped and with no cost. It's just all upside with these original dual lands. The fetches, the shock lands, and then these rainbow lands that we mentioned earlier, City of Brass, Mana Confluence. You get your colors with very little loss, very little payment.
You're never missing your colors, and and nothing's coming into play tapped. I'm probably not playing Triomes at bracket 5
I don't think so.
because you never need to. In a 3-color deck, I'm playing 9 fetches and 6. Three dual lands, 3 shock lands, your Mana Confluence, your City of Brass, your Command Tower. You've got perfect mana, Reflecting Pool.
Benjamin, give us your nugget of wisdom. Go for it.
So your perfect mana bases are really focused on speed, redundancy, resilience. You're not afraid to cut your lands down to just the bare minimum of what you need to make room for gas, but you're always hitting your colors and you're always hitting them on curve. You're going to fine tune your utility lands to just the ones that are really important. Strip Mine and Wasteland to mess with those guys' cradles out there. And then every land choice in your deck at the higher brackets should serve a clear purpose. You're not putting in lands because they're cool. You're putting in lands because you have a specific need in your deck for that land, or it's providing perfect mana when you need it. Those are the only reasons a land should be in your deck. So you're really trimming to the bare necessities at the higher brackets.
Yeah. A couple announcements before we head out. Don't forget that My Mythical Meta has merch available. We've got t-shirts.
Looking good.
We have several other merchandise available with that sweet compass and cards logo. So please check that out on our YouTube channel. You can click just below our video to our 4th wall link. You can click join anywhere our video is showing on YouTube to become a Metapod member. You can go to patreon.com/mymythicalmeta. Please find us on Spotify and take us on the go. Go to Spotify and just search My Mythical Meta. We're there, and we really want to reach 2,000 followers on Spotify before the end of the year. If you made it to this part of the video, tell us your favorite land that always enters tapped. Let's give a little appreciation to bracket 2 down there. Tell us your favorite land that always enters tapped. Derek, do you have a favorite land that always enters tapped?
I'm sure I do, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. Y'all stall for time, but let me see what I've got.
I mentioned mine already. It's Path of Ancestry. It taps for any color, and I scry every time I play my commander at minimum. That is its floor. So Path of Ancestry is my favorite land that always enters tap.
It's not a tap land, but I sure do love Scavenger Grounds.
Ooh, okay. That's a really good land, too. Very, very useful. Benjamin, how about you? Got a favorite land?
Yeah. Give me a second. I really like probably Balaged Recovery.
Very good. What is that? An MDFC?
Yes.
A modal double-faced card?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty good land.
On the back, it taps for green. It's Balaged Sanctuary. It always enters tapped, taps for green. But on the front side, it lets you pay 3 to return any card Return target card from your graveyard to your hand.
Pretty good.
You know,
Pretty
one
good.
it's a conditional untapped land. Minas Tirith from the Lord of the Rings set is a plains that could come untapped if you have a legendary creature taps for white, and then you can do white 1 tap to draw a card. Ain't bad in white
No,
card.
That's pretty
White-
good
a white
for
deck.
white, yeah.
I was
Benjamin?
wrong. The best one's Bajuka Bog.
Oh, it is Bajuka Bog.
It
you're
is
right.
Bajuka Bog. You're totally right. All right. Thank you guys for playing along. Listener, what's your favorite land that always enters tapped? As always, thank you, listeners. Thank you, audience, for listening. Benjamin, Derek, thank you guys, as always, for staying up late with me and being my great friends. Adios.
Bye.
Later, guys.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.